Hello, everybody. How are you doing? It is Wednesday, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and as promised, I am hopping on here to answer your questions live about night wake-ups. Now, I want to warn you all, I have a crazy cold, so I'm trying to talk as loud as I can without killing my throat here. But don't worry, I have my trusted box of tissues and my water bottle. So hopefully you will all be able to hear me once we get going here. Now, the thread I'm going to go through here, if you are new to the group, because this group is growing a lot, you're going to hear me sneezing and coughing a little bit. I'm sorry, but I promised you all I would come, so I'm here, is this thread right here, your questions about night wake-ups. Every week we have a different thread with a different theme, and you post your questions in there, and I come on in and answer them once a week. It's very exciting. So let's talk about, and I've been playing around with the times to see what works better for all of you. So we'll see if a lot of you end up not showing up for this one or a different time works better for you. We'll experiment until we get a good time that's convenient for all of you. I was actually going to do it tonight instead, but with this cold, it's just like really unpredictable if I'll even have a voice tonight. So wanted to catch myself while I was strong. So I'm going to go through the questions here, answer you as best I can. And if you are watching the replay, please post your questions below and hit me up under that. I'm going to try to talk about that then. Now let's see if you can hear me. I hope you can hear me okay, because there weren't issues with this before. All right. Let's make sure. Technology is not always my best friend over here. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm going to go first with Sarah's question. Sarah Blau. And sounds like Charlie asked the same thing, more or less. And Mimi, and Andy, and Michelle. Okay, I'll read Sarah's question, then you all kind of responded and said, I have the same issue, I have the same problem. Sarah wrote, I have an 8-month-old now. Until now, you've been nursing him whenever he wakes up and cries. It's at least 2 to 3 times at night. How do I wean him off of nursing all night? Okay, so Sarah. Charlie says same thing with a 7-month-old. Mimi says same thing with 11-month-old. Andy says hers is 8 months old, but he wakes up at least every hour. Michelle has twins who do this. Okay, so let's talk about this. Now, let's make sure we got everyone's questions in there. Let me just scroll down. Oh, I'm so happy that my voice is actually... All right, Sarah added something else. Do I need to stop nursing my baby to sleep in general? How does this work? Okay, so for those of you who are new to the group, last week we had a whole bedtime battles thread. And in last week's thread, we went through and talked all about phasing yourself out of the sleep dependency that your child has at bedtime. And we talked a lot about teaching your child how to fall asleep without that strong dependency, whether it was a pacifier or nursing or a bottle. And we talked about weakening that association. So nursing or a bottle or pacifier or holding or rocking till your child was drowsy. And then as your child starts getting drowsy, starting to allow sleep to come in a more independent place. So we talked about kind of separating that distinguishment between a sleep association and falling asleep right away. Now, how we said to do that was by stopping the nursing, stopping the bottle, stopping the rocking, patting, holding, bouncing, shaking episode. And right as your child is starting to fall asleep, if you would do it for another few minutes, at that point, starting to put them down awake and patting them and touching them and doing everything under your power to help them. But we only spoke about bedtime last week. A lot of you want to know what to do with the middle of the night. And as I said, it's kind of every week we've been doing this. It's been building upon one another. So those of you who are just hopping onto the lives now, just asking your questions or just joined the group, make sure to start with what we started. We only started this group a few weeks ago. We first started with naps. Then we started with bedtime, and now we're moving on to the middle of the night. But I definitely recommend jumping back a few weeks to watch the other lives because each week is building upon the next. And we'll go back to it, but just wanted to give everyone a full picture of sleep while we are starting. So with all of you who just asked your question, Mimi, Sarah, and all the other names I just said, Charlie, Michelle, Andy, all of you, what's going on now is the middle of the nighttime. You don't necessarily have to stop the nursing. So I want to first address 2 main components to why your child is waking up. Number 1, your child is waking up because of the same reason your child had difficulty falling asleep at bedtime: a sleep association, a sleep dependency, a crutch. There's 100 names for it, but it basically means your child sorry, told you I had the cold. Basically means your child is dependent on something or someone to fall asleep and remain asleep. So in the middle of the night, your child's sleep dependency, for all of you who just said this about the nursing, is the nursing. Your child constantly needs you to recreate their sleep environment for them over and over and over and over, and because of that, can't smoothly transition from sleep cycle to sleep cycle. That's the first reason your child is waking up so much to nurse. The second reason your child is waking up so much to nurse is because habit and hunger really, at the end of the day, can really be the same thing. Your child's body, even though they technically could go longer stretches at night, their body has trained itself to frequently wake up and has actually developed a real avid hunger. I told this to someone I was talking to yesterday, but imagine if you and I would set an alarm clock at every night, 3 a.m., and make ourselves a grilled cheese sandwich every night at 3 a.m. After 3, 4, 5, 6 days of this, eventually we would actually wake up hungry at 3 a.m. because our bodies had trained itself to be hungry. So habit, whether they're waking up because they just can or they're used to it, or if it's a real avid hunger, almost doesn't matter because it's completely jumbled together and a real hunger has developed due to the habit. So even though you feel like your child can go 6, 7, 8, 9 hours a night, which honestly, all the ages that you were asking these questions with Sarah and everyone between babies 8 to 11 months, most babies can go a good 8, 9 hours at that point, assuming they're on a good daytime routine and they're gaining weight properly and everything above the dotted line is checked and crossed. But just because they can go that long doesn't mean you can suddenly jump to get their body to go that long, because their body has acclimated itself to eating every 2 hours, every hour, one of you wrote. So what you want to do is start with a realistic goal. If you know your child can go every 3 hours during the day or every 4 hours, maybe start there. Or if you feel like your baby is nursing every hour in the middle of the night, my goodness, don't start with jumping it to 5 hours. Start with an hour and a half, 2 hours. And every 3, 4 nights, space out that time frame that your child is going between eating spells, because it's unfair to suddenly magically expect them to go much, much longer if their body isn't used to it. So first do that. Now, in the interim, while you are teaching your baby to last longer stretches, use the same thing we talked about last week in bedtime. Full touch, touching, calming, patting, holding, shaking, anything aside from the sleep dependency. I would definitely encourage you to try to keep your child in the crib as much as possible, because the more you do that, the more sleep association they're going in a positive way to develop with the crib. And do that. And every few nights, try to space out the feedings more and more and more. So you're going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, all of you. Your babies are going to learn to last longer stretches, and you're going to teach them to associate sleep with their crib instead of with the nursing. Okay, so that's all of you who asked that question. Next, Ashley. Let's read this. It's long. Okay. Ashley still rocks her 19-month-old to sleep, and she needs to stop that. There are nights when you put her down rocking and she wakes up once or twice, and other times where she's up 4 times. Teeth are coming in. She's been sick. She slept through the night for a while. Sounds like at 17 months there was a regression, and you never got over it. You have another baby coming in April. You don't want to be up with 2 babies, right? Okay, for some reason, she goes to bed at 7 and wakes up anywhere between 6:30 and 7:30 a.m. for the day. She typically takes an hour and a half nap. Okay, fine. So let's talk about this. You know now, Ashley, your child's sleep dependency, your 18-month-old sleep dependency is what? The rocking. So you don't have the issue of the nursing. You didn't write in there that she's bottle fed or nursing at night, but she has a sleep dependency of constantly wanting you to recreate that sleep environment for her. So Ashley, I really recommend watching our video from last week and talking about bedtime, how you can really strongly get a solid bedtime routine set up and make sure that there's a break in that association of rocking and immediately being to sleep. We talked about that in detail last week, so check that out. For the middle of the night, do the same idea that you enlist at bedtime. Every time she wakes up, you can go in there and help her, but not necessarily help her in the exact way she wants. We talked about this in detail. When your child's upset, especially an 18-month-old who can have a full-fledged temper tantrum, because my goodness, they're very verbal and you know exactly what they mean, even if they're not communicating it articulately. The screaming and the whatever, you know exactly what they want. So an 18-month-old who's upset, that's okay if they're upset, right? Because your child might be having a temper tantrum during the day that you're not giving them the dinner they want, or you're not touching them the same way, or they have the wrong socks on. It's not that your child shouldn't cry. It's that your child should always feel secure and emotionally responded to. There's a very big difference between your child crying because they're, God forbid, alone, not being responded to all by themselves to cry it out, or a child crying because they're not necessarily being responded to in the precise way they want. So in this case, go in and comfort your child, but not the sleep dependency way that they are absolutely used to doing. What I want you to do is go in and rub your 18-month-old's back, or go in and kiss your 18-month-old. She's going to be angry. I think you said you have a girl. Yeah, she's going to be angry. She's going to be upset. She's not abandoned. She's not traumatized. She's not alone. You're just trying to replace the current sleep dependency with another way to feel secure. And as the nights progress, she'll get more and more comfortable falling asleep without the rocking. And then at that point, you can start making a game plan to phase out the touching and phase out the talking. But that's the most important part with all of this, is to make sure that you really, really try to insert another means of soothing, which is not the sleep dependency. So if you're nursing, then you're not nursing to sleep, you're doing something else. If you're rocking, you're not rocking to sleep, you're doing something else. If your baby falls asleep only being touched, being patted, you're not doing that. Maybe you're talking and singing to them. Make sure that whatever the sleep dependency is, that's not what you're doing, because then you're just recreating it, okay? Brooke asks, my baby is 5 months old and finally starting to fall asleep independently at bedtime. Woohoo, that's great, okay. And shouldn't his night wakings be decreasing? Okay, so yes and no. Some children, Brooke, can very easily fall asleep at bedtime without the sleep dependency, can definitely do that really smoothly, but have a very, very difficult time transitioning back to sleep in the middle of the night. So it's not necessarily coinciding that just because you knock bedtime out of the way, the middle of the night is going to be super smooth. So what I want you to do, Brooke, is also enlist the same thing I just told everyone else. I don't know what your baby's doing at night. If your baby's nursing, getting bottles, wanting to be held, wanting to be fed, wanting any of those things, I have to, you'll have to let us know in the comments below after you watch this what specifically is going on, but enlist the same idea. If your baby's being fed all night, how long is your baby being fed for? How often is your baby being fed for? How can you comfortably space that out? When your baby wakes up, before the time you've designated to feed him, her, him, you said it's a boy, before you've designated to feed him, Brooke, use an alternate means to soothe him that is not necessarily what he's accustomed to, which is not his sleep dependency, okay? We're starting to see a theme here, right, with all these, and that's the reason I like to post these threads. And I've said this before, but a lot of you who are new, because the group is really growing, but basically when I have a bunch of random questions, one of you asking about a nap about your 3-year-old, one of you is asking about middle of the night wakings with your 2-week-old, this one wants to talk about their 10-year-old, it gets all everywhere and I can't help everyone as much. When we have a theme, you'll start seeing a serious undertone and undercurrent with everything I'm discussing, and you'll start hearing me repeat myself with advice and ideas, and you'll be able to hopefully apply it to you as well, even if you didn't ask a question necessarily. Mary, let's see. Your 2.5-year-old wakes up still 1 to 2 times at night and just cries until you get up to calm her. Why is she still doing this, and why can't I stop this? I'm exhausted. Okay, so Mary, I don't think you are here watching now, but that's okay. I will try to tag everyone in here who asks questions, because I don't know if this is a good time. I'm playing around with times. I think it seems earlier in the morning has worked for all of you to come, or at night. So maybe we might steer away from 12:30 again. But Mary, what you should do is exactly the same thing you were doing at bedtime that we talked about last week, Mary. When your child wakes up, you don't want your child coming to your sleeping space. Is your child waking up and coming to your bed? I don't know. You didn't write that. So I'm not sure if your 2.5-year-old is coming and getting you in your room and coming into your bed, but you want to make sure you respond as quickly as possible, so you are coming to their sleeping environment. You are coming and getting up. Is it a boy or a girl? To her environment. You want to make sure the second you hear her, she doesn't have to get out of her bed. She doesn't have to come look for you in her half asleep state and knock on your door or come into your bed and wake you up. You want to respond to her immediately so that she learns to associate. When I call out to my mommy, she comes right away. Oh, I don't have to go looking for her. Oh, I don't have to have a temper tantrum. Oh, I don't have to do this whole song and dance. So she learns when she calls out to you, you come right away. And you do the same thing that you're doing at bedtime if bedtime has started smoothing out. Come to her sleeping space and be there with her. Sit there with her. Touch her and calm her. And as she's doing better, start making a game plan after 3, 4, 5 nights to start progressively phasing yourself out of the picture more, because we don't want to develop a new dependency, right? I don't want to replace one sleep dependency with needing you to sit with her all night with another sleep dependency of rocking her, or another sleep dependency of you patting her back all night. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing as the new way that is not the sleep dependency, you also can make sure you phase off of slowly, because otherwise you're just going to replace something new. So once something is working, you want to make a game plan how to slowly, progressively get your involvement in there less and less. And we'll talk about this more next week, but I want you to first make a game plan to make sure that you know what to do in the middle of the night. And you have to be consistent, Mary, every single night wake up, or any of you who've asked questions. I don't want you to sometimes do one thing, sometimes do another thing. Do it for half the night, then give up, because it's almost worse than doing nothing, okay? Because inconsistency confuses babies and they get mixed messages. Mickey, or Mikey, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I put my 9-month-old down to sleep when he's awake, and he wakes up a couple times at night and usually doesn't sleep for longer than 3 to 4 hours. Whether you nurse him or rock him back to sleep, he sometimes wakes up. Do you encourage cry it out? No. So no, I do not. And I wrote you this. I do not encourage cry it out at all. For those of you who don't know my story, I started this when I had my oldest over 10 years ago. And I was really looking for a gentler method. I did not want to leave him to scream on his own, but I also didn't want to be like a human pacifier until he went off to college. So that's why if you go back and watch all the different lives here, Mickey, you're going to see how everything is kind of built upon itself. But no, I'm not advocating to leave your child to cry at all, nor would I tell you to do that. You have to first be realistic here. Go back, Mickey, and watch what I said to everyone else about their babies who wake up to nurse or have bottles. You have to first make a realistic time frame. If your baby's up every 3-4 hours, you can't suddenly say, sorry, I'm going to let you be for 8-9 hours. That's not fair. Your baby's used to nursing frequently, and it's not fair to suddenly jump his body to be longer than is realistic. So make a game plan of 4.5 hours, stretching him a little bit, but nothing that you feel like is not realistic. And when he wakes up before that time frame, what are you going to do to help him fall back asleep? Are you going to rub his back? Are you going to sing to him? Are you going to cuddle him? Like I said, I don't recommend taking him out of his crib because then you're just going to replace a new sleep dependency nursing with rocking or being held. But do that, and then once that's working, make a game plan to phase yourself out of the picture more and more. Shira, your 4.5-month-old has never been a good sleeper. But when he wakes up after 2 a.m., he can't settle back down until the morning unless you are holding him. I follow age-appropriate wake times during the day and make sure he's napping enough, and have started trying to put him down awake. Is there anything else to do aside from let him cry? Yes, don't let him cry, especially if, oh, hi, Nikki, I'm going to come back to you in a minute and answer your question. But especially because it's really, really difficult to ascertain what his daytime sleep is. Most kids who wake up at 2 in the middle of the night, a 4.5-month-old that can't settle back to sleep, it's more than just a sleep dependency issue. My guess is that your napping is off, because if a child is having such a hard time settling back to sleep in the middle of the night, with a sleep dependency, with your rocking, with your holding, with your bouncing, with your shaking, with your feeding, with all that, and still can't fall asleep, that's usually a big red flashing light to me, Shira, that your baby's overtired. And how we nag this overtired in the bud is by making sure there's good daytime sleep. So go back and watch the nap live we did, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, with the questions. A 4.5-month-old should not be kept awake longer than 2 hours max anytime during the day. So it could be you have the nap structure set up with an hour-long nap here and a 2-hour nap long there, but it could be your baby's kept awake too long, which could very, very much encourage him to wake up at night and make it difficult for him to fall back asleep at night. So Mickey, what did you say? He goes long. Wait, let me pull up your question again. We did a minute ago. Hang on. Oh, that was your 9-month-old. Okay, so he goes long stretches during the day, so I know he can go longer. Also, I've tried to suit him other ways, and it makes things worse. Okay, I'm curious what other things you have tried. Because obviously, Mickey, and I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Mikey? I guess you can't tell me. You can spell it out phonetically for me. But if there's no right or wrong way necessarily to do it. If you've tried rubbing his back, or you've tried doing other things to soothe him and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean that's the only way. Try something else. But remember, there's going to be some... I'm right, it's Mickey. Okay, thanks. There's a lot of possibilities of what you want to do, but caving in and just continuing to feed him is only kind of feeding the beast. It's only making the situation worse, progress itself. You can't judge anything if it's being successful before 5 nights. And I'm going to say that for you because you've tried other things. Other people, I might say 2 nights, 3 nights, 4 nights, but because you've tried other things and because of his age, sounds like he's a little bit of a stubborn guy. That's okay. It doesn't scare me at all. But you have to try something, and don't just try it for an hour. Don't just try it at bedtime. Don't just try it for half the night wakings. You need to do it at bedtime the whole night through for a good 4 or 5 nights to determine if it's not working. And working doesn't mean he's not crying, because he is going to be upset. Remember, I wish, and I've told you this so many times, all of you who've been following, my YouTube channel or been reading my blogs or even this new group we've made, I wish I was able to find a complete tear-free approach that works. It just isn't out there. There are people who advocate and boast no-cry methods, but they don't work. This is as gentle as possible. We never leave your baby's side. You're always responded to. They know that mommy's here. They see you, they hear you, they feel you, they touch you. They just might be angry that you're not giving in, but they're never, God forbid, abandoned or traumatized. When you know that logically, then you're able to emotionally stick with whatever you do. And you say, okay, progress is okay because I'm being consistent in and of itself, Mickey. So don't just say it's not working if you haven't given it enough time to do it. You need to give it a good 4 or 5, sometimes even a week of doing the same thing over and over and spacing out those feedings to 4.5 hours or 3 hours, whatever you're comfortable with. And really, every single time your baby wakes up at night, using another tactic to get him back down, because otherwise prematurely giving up is not seeing what it is. And I tell my families I work with one-on-one, progress is consistency. You can't judge progress by whether or not after one night your baby's magically sleeping through the night, or whether after one night, suddenly your baby falls asleep in 10 minutes when the night before it was a half an hour. It doesn't work like that. I wish our babies were robots, and sometimes, trust me, I wish I could find the off switch on my kids, okay? But especially when I'm not feeling well and I have a cold and I'm sneezing and I just want to fall asleep on the couch. No, I'm just kidding. I love my children. But it's not always a linear equation of every night better, every night better, every night better. Sometimes it's a backwards movement. Sometimes it's a sidestep. Just being consistent in and of itself will get you there. So, Mickey, I want to check in with you. Let us know how it goes. And let us know what your game plan is of what you're going to do to stick with this. Okay, my pleasure. Okay, that was like a good pep talk for you, right? Okay. Zelda, your baby is just over 2, and he wakes up a few times at night. You stopped nursing him in the middle of the night 2 months ago, but he still wakes up and asks and cries to nurse. He's not in a crib. He's in a bed. Okay, hang on. I'm just scrolling down. Sometimes he will stay asleep for a little, and then he can be up every few hours. He starts his morning at 5 a.m. I'm just skimming through this. You keep putting him back in his bed at night. Sometimes you have no energy. You let him stay in your bed. Everyone's up in the house at 1 a.m. because he's up. Please help. Okay, got it. Few different things to tell you, Zelda. You might not like what I'm going to tell you, okay? I don't recommend moving children to official beds from cribs until they are close to 3 years old, okay? Some people think that's crazy. If your child's really, really ready before, maybe 2.5, but definitely not just pushing the 2 mark. So your baby's just over 2. A child that age doesn't developmentally understand cause and effect of their reactions as much as a mature or slightly older 2.5 to 3-year-old will. What do I mean by that? The different ways that I teach children how to stay in their bed is like reward-based, doing a lot of positive encouragement and reinforcement. We never use punishments. We never use consequences. We never threaten, never that. You never want to have any negativity associated with sleep. But we do that with stickers, with charts, with building them up. But a 2-year-old is still very much a baby, and they still can't understand. They understand their actions, obviously. They're smart, they're delicious, they're wonderful little creatures. But a 2-year-old is not at that place of developmental maturity to understand, if I stay put right now, then in the morning this is going to happen. Or if I do this, I remember mommy told me, then this is going to happen, because they're just still too little. So what ends up happening is, I want my mommy, I'm coming out of my bed. And you can't get upset with them for that, because they're not at a place where they can really understand it. Lindsay, hi, I see your question. I'm going to go through Zelda's first and we'll get back to you. It's really important you understand that. So I would really strongly recommend moving your 2-year-old into a crib. Now, most people who move their kids into beds this young usually tell me, okay, but Batya, the whole reason I moved my baby into a bed is because they were climbing out of their crib. Fine. That's a separate issue. I could talk about that for another very, very long time of what to do and how to transition them. Still, I would really recommend moving your child to a crib, because it's a lot easier to control their sleeping environment. And also, I don't feel that it's safe for a 2-year-old to have free roam of the house in the middle of the night when you're sleeping. They could, God forbid, go to the kitchen and take out something. And, aside from safety-wise, they can come into your bed. It just makes it too difficult. I very much prefer, like I told everyone else, for you to come to your child's sleeping space, not having them come to you, because you're in control of the situation here. And what's happening here is basically a nonverbal power struggle, and you're tugging and you're tugging and you're tugging and you're tugging. But when you're in control and you come to their sleeping space, it gives you that gentle, loving authority that they know you're the one in charge. Okay, so think about that, Zelda. Now, next thing you wrote here is, it sounds like really that's the main issue happening, because once you can get him back in his crib, then it'll be a lot easier to get rid of that sleep dependency of wanting you to hold him, wanting to lay in your bed with you, wanting all these things to happen, because he's just not going to be able to physically get out of his own sleep environment as much. And if he starts crawling out, you have some kind of buzzer or some kind of monitor where you are able to respond immediately and come back to them, so you actually technically set up the situation in a way where he can't come out in a loving, gentle manner. I'm never here to play like drill sergeant with our kids' sleep. We want them to feel secure and loved at all times. But when you do that, he's not nursing anymore at night. He'll learn I have to stay put. He'll learn to do that. And then at that point, you use another sleep dependency, like I told everyone else before, to help him back to sleep. Maybe if he really, really likes it when you hug him tight, so you'll just touch his hand lightly. Or maybe if he really, really wants you to rub his back, you won't. You'll just sing to him. So he might be angry because you're giving him another way to feel responded to that's not that sleep dependency. And then again, like I told everyone else here, after it's working well for a few nights, I just told Mickey, a few nights could mean 5 nights or a week, then you start working on a plan to start phasing yourself out of the picture more and more and more and more. So Lindsay, what did you ask? Your daughter has gotten a lot better recently since we added solids into her diet. How old is your daughter, Lindsay? But I'll keep reading this while you type that up. So she's gotten better since you added solids, but she still wakes up at night. Sometimes she's not even fully awake. She's just fussing. How do I see more on here? Aha, okay, there we go. Tossing and trying to put her pacifier back in her mouth. If she lost it, it turns into full-blown screams or cry. No, she may depend on the pacifier. Yes, okay. So, Lindsay, let me know how old your baby is. But until you type that up in terms of how old your baby is, a pacifier can be our best friends or our worst enemies. It can completely go either way. Sometimes it can be a full-fledged sleep dependency where you have to pop that pacifier back in every hour, every half an hour. But sometimes a pacifier can just be like an attachment object, a lovey. There's 100 words for them, something that your child feels very bound to and a very positive association with. So definitely a pacifier is a trickier one to get rid of because there's no gradual phasing your child off of it. I don't know how old your baby is. Did you write that here? No, I don't see that. So let me know. But you can't just suddenly have your baby suck the pacifier until they're almost asleep and rip it out of their mouth. That's worse than taking it away. So with the pacifier, you have to first decide, is this a sleep dependency and do I need to get rid of it? If you do, then what? You get rid of that sleep dependency of the pacifier. And again, like I told everyone else, offer an alternate means to help your baby to sleep. Rub your baby's back, sing to her, help her in the middle of the night. Now, I don't know if she's waking up and eating at all at night, but she still might be upset. Remember that, but she's with you. You're there for her. You're always responding to her, and she always knows she can rely on your help to be there, so that way she knows, oh, when I call my mommy, she comes to me. She might not give in exactly the way I want. Sorry, the sniffles, guys. This cold is killer. She might not give in to me the way I want every single moment, but I can rely on her and know that she's going to come, and eventually that association starts to build patterns in her mind where she knows how to fall asleep with your aid, and then you phase off of your aid. Okay, I hope that answers you, but I'm still here, Lindsay, if you want to ask another question on that. But the solids is almost irrelevant. I mean, it depends on how old your baby is. But assuming she's gaining weight and she's getting enough calories during the day, most babies, I'm assuming she's somewhere within the 5 to 7 month bracket. If you're just starting to introduce solids, most babies can give a good 6 to 8 hour chunk in that age, okay? Samantha, you have a 7-month-old. You did a form of cry it out. So he's able to fall asleep on his own, but he still wakes up 2 to 3 times at night to nurse. He's exclusively breastfed, and he's already on solids, breakfast, dinner. How can he be weaned from night nursing? If so, how can we do it? He's also an early riser. 2.5 hours of nap time. Okay, how can you push back his bedtime? Sounds like a lot of things going on here, Samantha. What I want to tell you, number one, is make sure his daytime sleep is intact. Go back and watch the live we did a few weeks ago about naps and what I call the sweet spot for sleep, the right sleep window. You want to nail the right routine. Even if he's getting enough daytime sleep, but it's not distributed evenly, or he's awake for too long, that independently could cause early rising. Usually early rising for a baby this age is caused by actually not getting enough sleep. So bumping his bedtime later would probably have the adverse effect and make the earlier fives turned into the possible late 4s or earlier. So I don't recommend making his bedtime earlier. What I recommend doing is teaching him to last longer stretches like we talked about with everyone else here. Pick a span of time you're comfortable with. He wakes up 2 to 3 times at night. So what does that mean? Every 3 to 4 hours he's up. So pick 4 hours or 3.5 hours that you feel comfortable with and use an alternate method to help him fall asleep. If you want to do the cry it out, if that's what you did and you're comfortable with, fine. If you don't want to do that, you can use a gentler approach that I explain now of touching him and making sure he feels secure, talking to him. But make sure that you gradually increase the span between those wake-ups so his body can acclimate to lasting longer. Because we talked about that habit and hunger are very much correlated a few minutes ago. Excuse me. Okay, Angela. You started sleep training at night and a few nights ago. You're doing cry it out per your pediatrician. The first night she cried 35 minutes. A mad cry. Second time she cried 7 minutes. The second night she didn't wake up once. Okay, that's pretty good. Last night she only woke up once and cried for 20 minutes. I think we're on to something. I just have to see how it goes for a few more days. Okay, so that's not a question. That's more of a go, Angela. Okay, that's really good. Keep it up. Make sure that you don't, though, Angela, judge your progress on the time it takes her to fall asleep. Judge it on kind of like from a bird's eye view of like what's been happening from where you started versus where you are, because sometimes we can get so caught up in the time. Last night took 20 minutes, tonight only took 10 minutes, and then it was 7 minutes. What happens if suddenly a 40-minute little span is thrown in there? You're going to get disillusioned. You're going to feel really, shot down. You're going to feel like you're not being successful. That's not it. It's a bird's eye view of how she's learning to fall asleep on her own, how well she's doing, and if she's sleeping through the night. Okay, Chrissy. Your almost 2-year-old still gets up 1 to 2 times at night. He wakes up crying and screaming. Sometimes I can soothe him back to sleep, and other times it goes on for 30 to 40 minutes. I think he's having night terrors. He wakes up more than your 2-month-old. Mary, same thing. Right, we just went through that with you, Mary, right? It's rough by this point. I'm not going to read through all your little comments, but I'm happy you found each other so you can, figure that out. But what I want to tell you, Chrissy, is the same thing I told everyone else right now about their 2-year-olds. I told Zelda. I told Mary. I think there was one other person. First of all, make sure you respond immediately, especially if a child's having night terrors. Night terrors are different than nightmares. Night terrors usually mean a child like bashing their head, and it can get actually really violent. So in the comments below, I'm curious if you could tell me, if you're watching the replay here, Chrissy, if it's a nightmare or a night terror. A nightmare means being scared, had a scary dream, something happened that made them feel uncomfortable. A night terror can get like they almost seem possessed, like they're screaming, they're biting, they're kicking, they're just like not in reality, and you tackle the two very differently. So let me know which one it is. I'm going to assume it's a nightmare because night terrors are less common. So assuming it's a nightmare, you want to make sure you respond to your child immediately, Chrissy. When 2-year-old calls out to you, make sure you go right away so they don't have to get to this point of hysteria. And I know when I wake up from a nightmare, I'm very scared. So you want to make sure you respond to them right away so they feel secure. And again, use something consistent to help them fall asleep, but isn't necessarily what you're always doing. If you always sit and lay down in your child's bed with him, or if you always stroke his head and sing to him until he's fully asleep, sit down next to him and talk to him until he's asleep. Replace the current sleep dependency with something else. And as he gets better at falling asleep, he's going to learn that you're always coming. And I know I'm being redundant here, but I can't drive this point home enough. He's going to learn to feel secure that you're always responding to him. And he's going to learn to get dependent on less and less of your help. But if it's a night terror, Chrissy, let me know. We treat that completely differently. Okay? I'm not trying to like leave you in the dark here, but it's a much more detailed situation, but I want to talk to you about it if it is a night terror, so let me know. Shira, your baby's 6 months and co-sleep, so you're ready to move her into a crib because she started waking up 5 to 6 times a night. Wow. How do you transition her without being traumatic? Great question. So again, it's all about gentle. First, pick your new sleeping space. First, pick where you want your child to be sleeping, what room, what environment. Get all the sheets set up and everything, and just make sure you're there with her. Don't suddenly put your baby in a new room, lock the door, and say, see you later, figure it out. That could potentially be traumatizing. Where am I, mommy? Why aren't you responding to me? I'm used to co-sleeping in your bed with you all night, and suddenly I'm in this like dark crib all by myself. Help. No, you're not going to do that. So what I recommend doing then is staying there with her and helping her. Okay, making sure that she feels secure. And after 3, 4, 5, 6 nights, depending on what I've told all of you, at that point you can see she's learning to fall asleep and stay asleep better on her own. She's a lot more independent, despite the fact that she calls out to you, and then you can start working on phasing yourself out of the picture. Okay, I'm going to try to go through the last ones here. My throat is really starting to hurt, so if I get cut off, I will answer your other questions. Stephanie, your 24-month-old wakes up in the middle of the night crying almost every night. It takes him a bit to settle down. At times, we end up sleeping in his room on the floor. This started since his sister was born 3 months ago. That's definitely. And he started to use the potty. Okay, it's hard to console him at this time. Yeah, middle of the night, when you've got a 2-year-old, they don't know what's up or what's down. They're half asleep themselves. If you try to tell me something logical when I'm half asleep in the middle of the night, I don't know what you're talking about. So, got to give that credit to your 2-year-old that he's not necessarily going to totally understand everything happening around him. Having a new baby can definitely cause, let me just hold this up, could definitely cause some sleep issues because there's a lot going on emotionally. There's a new baby, mommy, daddy, whoever's in the picture is, spending more time with the baby, a little less time with me. Maybe they're trying too hard to involve. So it's definitely an emotional roller coaster when you bring a new baby home, and it can cause a sleep regression and does very frequently. But you want to make sure, I like that you respond to him right away, and I like that you're sleeping on his floor, but that is the new sleep dependency he's developed. I call out to mommy and she sleeps on the floor. Great. So maybe don't sleep on the floor anymore. Maybe sit on a chair in the doorway, and when he wakes up, sit there with him, talk to him, but when he's calm or almost sleeping, then leave. And then in a few more nights, try to phase yourself out. So the ultimate goal is he's less dependent on you. It's great that you're not having to bring him into your bed or touch him and offer 100 sippy cups in the middle of the night or take him to the bathroom all these times. That's great, I think, if that's not what's happening. But you want to make sure that your goal is that he gets less dependent on your involvement. And even if that means physically removing yourself from the picture a little less, still being visible, still being there for him, that's going to make the transition easier on him. All right, Yael, when your baby is sleep trained and has not been nursing at all for months, what do you do when they randomly wake up at night? That is a great question. So usually when a baby is already sleep trained, sleeping through the night and doing everything amazingly, random wake-ups are going to happen. It's the name of the game. It's called being a person, right? We're not machines. Things aren't always going to be perfect. So hang on, I want to make sure I don't have another question here. Okay, things aren't always going to be perfect. So what you want to do is just treat it as it comes. Obviously, if your child had a shot or is teething or you have any reason to believe that they're not well, then for sure respond to them and help them. But you want to make sure that if they are sick, you don't develop a new sleep dependency. So on the rare nights it happens, yeah, you might decide, oh, my child is fine, they don't need me, and leave it as is. You might decide, oh, it sounds like they have a dirty diaper, or you know what, they were really, really pulling in their ear today. I'm wondering if they have an ear infection, or we got shots a few days ago. Maybe we need some Motrin, or maybe my baby has a little fever, isn't feeling well. You have to take each situation as it comes because there will be regressions. But the key, Yael, is to make sure it doesn't become a full-blown regression where you have a random night wake up here or two or there, and it becomes suddenly 3 weeks of your baby being up all night. So it's a balance of giving your child his needs and making sure that you're there for him if he's not feeling well, or if there's a random wake up, or if there's an older child, a scary dream, but making sure it doesn't become a nightly occurrence. It's a balance there. Okay, Steph. Let's make this bigger. Your 4.5-month-old used to sleep 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. and now wakes up every 2 to 3 hours. You have a bedtime routine that's been in place for a few weeks. You nurse him once in the night around 2. Sometimes you can just put the soother back in his mouth. You're exhausted getting up 5 to 6 times a night. My goodness, who wouldn't be? On top of that, he's a horrible napper. Ding, ding, ding. That's a big problem with the 4.5-month-old. Why did I say ding, ding? Go back, Steph, and watch the nap thread we did 2 weeks ago. Going to help you a lot, okay? A lot of night wakings happen with babies this age because their daytime routine is not set up properly. So yeah, all these other ideas are going to help you also that we talked about with night wakes ups and getting rid of the sleep dependency and replacing it with something else and spacing out the night feedings. But if you don't have proper day sleep set up, it's not necessarily going to work. So I really want you to try and ascertain the best routine for your baby and try to do that by hopping onto that excuse me, nap live that we did a few weeks ago, talking about the right sleep window and making sure you're getting that sweet spot for sleep and your baby's not overtired by the time you start bedtime. Okay, you asked about early morning wake-ups, Javi. That's next week, early rising, so stay tuned. Let's see. I don't know how to view the rest of the comments here. Oh, here we go. Oh gosh, technology is not my friend. I see someone just posted something. Ashley, I see you. Okay. Yeah, but anyway, Javi, early rising is next week. Ashley, let's see what you said. This hasn't already been talked about. My daughter is 15 months old and wakes up 3 times at night to nurse. Bed is at 7 p.m. I'm at 12, 3, 5, or 6. I've done cry it out for the first feed in the past. For the first feed in the past. Where did it go? Okay, but she can go on as well for over an hour. I need my 10-year-old here to help me use my phone. Every technological device needs to come with like a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old to help work it, right? Anyway, okay, past, but she can go for over an hour and she's exhausted. Naps 1.5 hours during the day. She can't self-soothe in her crib. Okay. So we did talk about this, Ashley, but I don't mind telling you again because you're here live. We talked about a few different things. We talked about the sleep dependency, which in your case is obviously nursing, and replacing a current sleep dependency with something else. So not necessarily leaving your child to cry it out, or if you want to do cry it out, that's fine too. There's no place of judgment here. I'm just offering a gentler approach for people who don't want to do that. So either go back to doing the cry it out if you want to. If you don't, use another means to help her fall back asleep, whether it's padding, rubbing her back, touching her, singing to her, and make sure that you don't suddenly jump to no nursing. Because even though she's 15 months old, is she nursing at night? Yeah, you do that. Even though she's 15 months old, most 15-month-olds don't need to eat at all at night. But we talked a lot about habit turning into actual hunger. So I would say if she's eating that many times, you could definitely bump it down to 2. So she eats at bedtime, maybe do 12 and 5. Get rid of that 3 a.m. one. And once that's going well, bump it down to 1 time around 4. And anytime she wakes up before the designated nursing time, use this alternate method to soothe her, okay? Rubbing her back, singing to her, doing that. And we talked a lot. I want you to go back and watch the whole thing, Ashley. We talked a lot about success not necessarily being determined on what she's doing and how she's responding, but looking at everything from a bird's eye view. And after 5, 6 nights when you see she's doing well, starting to progressively make a plan to phase you out of the picture so she can learn to do that better and better on her own. Okay, but go back and watch this. We talked about it a lot, but there's definitely hope. Your 15-month-old can sleep through the night. For sure. A 15-month-old typically speaking, and again, oh, please, my pleasure. But I know I'm giving you generics when, they're gaining weight during the day, they're getting enough calories, but most 15-month-olds that are healthy can go a full 11, 12 hours at night. And I want that to be your goal, Ashley. Don't sell yourself short and say, oh, well, fine, I'll still nurse her once in the night just because she can go 12 hours, which means you can, I doubt you're going to bed at 7 p.m., but that means when you go to bed at 11, you can get your 8 hours, your 9 hours, whatever you need to function. Okay. Freda. Your 5.5-month-old wakes up just kidding. My 5.5-month-old wakes up every 2 hours to nurse back to sleep. It doesn't bother you. Okay? It's only a problem if you feel it is. And I tell people that all the time. No one can decide if it's a problem with your baby other than you. So you're okay with that. The problem, though, he'll be up for an hour and a half. And that'd be heaven, 12 hours, right? The problem is he'll be up for an hour and a half in the middle of the night. So I would say with your 5-month-old, it's the same thing that I told everyone else here, Freda. Go and analyze his daytime sleep. Go back and watch the live we did 2 weeks ago on naps. Because if you're missing that sweet spot during the day, that's going to cause not only night wakings, but sleep fighting, where you have a baby that's up for 1, 2, 3 hours in the middle of the night and not settling to sleep. Nechama, your 14-month-old wakes up numerous times. She goes to sleep between 7 and 7:30 and usually wakes up once within the first hour. You end up nursing her a bunch of times. Okay, so this is the same thing I just told Ashley, and your baby's pretty close in age to her. Your baby can also go 11, 12 hours at night, my dear, okay? So you want to first pick realistic times to set yourself. Okay, you know what? My baby wakes up 2, 3 hours at night, but guess what? A newborn wakes up 2, 3 hours at night. We're talking about a 14-month-old. So pick a bedtime. I'd say 2 other times a night, like I told Ashley. Maybe 12 a.m., maybe 4 a.m., something like that. And when your baby wakes up before those times, alternate means to soothe her. Rubbing, patting, touching. Don't take her out of the crib because that's just going to complicate matters. But do whatever you can to help settle her back to sleep without doing that. And when it's going better, phase yourself out of the picture. Okay, next person here. Your baby is almost 4 months old. This is Hannah's question. Baby's almost 4 months old and sleeps for 3 hours, and after that wakes up every hour or two until he wakes up at 8. So a 4-month-old, like I told everyone else who asked about littler babies, 4 or 5 months, it's a combination of the sleep dependency issue that we just talked a lot about, but it's also a combination of not having proper daytime sleep. So I also suggest you go in and look at all the questions in the thread of the nap wake up, because that's going to help you create, an ideal routine for your baby. So it's going to work better for you. I think those are all the questions. Oh no, Carol, one more question. After weeks of solid night sleeping, she wakes up every 2 hours again. Your only guess, it could be teething. She normally tells me when she's teething. So it's hard to say because you didn't say what she's doing at night, Carol, but I actually know you, Carol, because you've been hanging out on my page, and I think we worked a lot through this issue of getting her to sleep through the night. I would say go back to doing what you did before, Carol, if you remember. Everything I told everyone else, but you started helping her. I believe she's sleeping on a mattress on your floor, if I recall. But start helping her again, coming to her space so she doesn't feel nervous when she calls out to you and you're not there. Make sure that you respond to her immediately and help her to sleep as much as you can. And as she's getting better at that, like I told everyone else, but like you already did before, Carol, phase yourself out more. Regressions can happen from a lot of things. It can be teething. It can be a stomach pain. It could be a nightmare. It could be just a random wake up and then they see, hey, mom comes every night. This is cool. I'll do it every night. That can happen. But the key is to make sure that 1 or 2 random wake ups does not become weeks and weeks and weeks of being up all night and sleep regression. So get it back on, because you want to make sure you can do whatever you can to get things in a better place with her sleep, because you know she's capable of sleeping through the night. And it's almost a tease when you have a child who will sleep through the night and do really well and then stops, because it's like, oh, well, I know they could, but now they stopped. But that just should be a boast of confidence for you, so you know she's capable. Let's see. Uh-oh. Okay, Esther, I'm going to go in a minute, guys, because my throat is killing me, but I'm going to try to answer a few more of yours. Your 8.5-month-old goes to sleep nicely between 6:30 and 7. He wakes up nightly. He's usually fine, sometimes a dirty diaper, sometimes spit up, but nothing wrong. What can I do besides cry it out? Okay, Esther, I really want to go through this with you, but I just answered the same question with a bunch of other people, and I want to save my throat for a minute. Watch it, and then post your question below, and I will type out any missing holes that you're feeling, but it's a balance of spacing out the night feedings and getting rid of that sleep dependency. So watch the beginning part of this video to make sure that you know what's going on. He sleeps for 2 naps, 2 hours during the day. Yeah, so I think that's pretty okay for a child his age. but you want to make sure that you can nip those two things in the bud. Okay, so I'm going to go, guys. My box of tissues is waiting for me. No, my throat is doing okay. I just want to save it because I have some more calls today. And I just really wanted to tell you all, this is so fun. I love this group. It's growing amazingly. Please invite your friends to the group. Okay, it's a closed group, so obviously only invite people that you feel like are going to benefit from the group, who you feel like want help with their child's sleep, but it can be anyone from a newborn to an 8-year-old. I deal with all kinds of issues. We're going to keep these threads coming. We have a lot of other exciting things happening, but spread the word. Spread your friend, spread it there. I'm really excited. I just started this group a few weeks ago. Already we've grown tremendously. So I'm just really excited to help families sleep. So invite your friends, let them know. Definitely post your questions in the thread when you have it. Next week's is going to be early rising. So if you have an early rising issue, whether it's with a newborn or a toddler or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, we're going to talk about early rising and why it's happening and how to stop it. But I hope this answered your questions about night wakings. Remember the two things of continuing, continuing the bedtime thread from last week, but starting to incorporate that for the nights by weakening the sleep association more and getting rid of night feedings if that's an issue. But like I said, if you're new to the group, go back 2 weeks ago, watch our first one we did on naps, then watch last week's on bedtime, and then watch this one. You're going to be able to put all the pieces together for awesome sleep. All right? Looking forward to seeing you. Bye-bye.